So then next we're going to talk about TKES standards and how it fits with differentiation in the classroom. So in Georgia, we do use the TKES standards for our instructional support and for our evaluations. But when we look at the standards, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming to figure out how it all holds into our content area and how it fits. So the first standard that's really obvious that fits with differentiation is standard 4, which is differentiated instruction. And I actually took these right from the Georgia Department of Education. These are some of the things that were listed as the teacher, like what they should see as to indicate that a teacher knows what to do with differentiated instruction. They're challenging and supporting each student's learning by providing appropriate content and skills. So really that's showing that they know each learner in the classroom. They're differentiating the content, process, and product, like we were talking about earlier, and even the learning environment to meet the individual developmental needs. So for some students, small group learning environment, big group learning environment, all kinds of options. They're providing remediation, enrichment, and acceleration. Again, you're meeting your learners that are struggling, you're meeting your learners that are on target, and you're meeting those learners that are ahead and pushing them, accelerating those, enriching the ones that are on target, and then remediating the ones that need that. Teachers that are good with differentiation use flexible grouping strategies, which I think is something we tend to do very well in the arts. We have a lot of options for groupings, and it's something that we can really use to our benefit. Differentiation for TKES is using diagnostic, formative, and summative assessment data to help drive our instruction and figure out who we need to differentiate for. They develop critical and creative thinking by providing activities at the appropriate level and challenge for students. So meaning finding a balance between not having material that's challenging, but that also is attainable for students. And then they have high learning expectations for all students based on that student's developmental levels. Clearly, if you have a student who has severe developmental delay, maybe we're not going to have the same expectations. High expectations for that student may not look the same as a gifted learner. And so we have to really think about what does it look like for each student, which can be overwhelming in a large ensemble. But I think, just kind of creating a profile for each class is really helpful. So these are some general look-fors from TKES. And again, this is from the DOE. They want to see evidence of a variety of instructional techniques, and different ways that they can see that students can show mastery. They want you to have options for your students. They want to see evidence of teachers making decisions based on formative assessment, using your data to then drive your instruction, using flexible grouping practices, letting kids practice in their own style, which is really hard sometimes, but really letting kids have some freedom of choice in how they learn to how they also give content back to us to show mastery. Using formal and informal assessments to inform adjustments to instruction and address the needs of our students in each tier. So really using all our different assessment tools, whether diagnostic, summative, formative, or formal and informal, to really help inform our instruction and help us prepare. Now, I really like to know, what does that look like for orchestra? When an administrator comes in and they're looking for standard 4 differentiated instruction, what does that look like in an orchestra classroom? Well, they should see me using visual, oral, and tactile methods of instruction. All 3 should be present at different times. They should see partner activities, rotated seating. So they may not see this, but this should be something we do for differentiation, giving different students a chance to sit up front, allowing access to the conductor. Oftentimes we get IEPs and 504s for preferential seating. Well, sometimes that's really tricky because there's only so many preferential seating spots, but we may have 20 IEPs in a room. So rotating seating allows kids to have that access. Providing alternate fingerings or positions or adding vibrato as options for raising the level of music or even lowering the level. So meaning, if your students are rock star students and they're way ahead of some of the other students in class, moving things into third position or telling them to add vibrato or giving them a more difficult fingering so that they have a way to challenge themselves. Using stand partner pairing, sometimes ability seeding, sometimes strong weak, and mixing it up. Having a strong weak player paired together is really great because then that weaker player gets a model. It also encourages the other strong player to be on their game and model for that player. Now, sometimes that can get frustrating. So, again, mixing it up so that students can sometimes be paired with another strong player and also so they can sometimes emulate and imitate each other. For advanced students, telling them about opportunities for students outside of class, outside ensembles, all state solo and ensemble, different opportunities that they have access to. Allow students to have voice in the music that's performed. I think that's a great way we can have some differentiation and some student voice. Now, when we do this, we do it within the parameters of I pre-select what I'm willing to let them play and then let them choose. So having them have some, appropriate guidelines, but then really helping them choose music that they like. And it gives them some buy-in and some ownership. My ninth graders right now, we're planning spring concert music. It's pops music, so we have a lot more flexibility at that time. One of the things they requested to play was a throwback song. They want to play Dragon Hunter, a kid's favorite. And, I said yes. And I thought, hey, we can really, so they know Dragon Hunter, but we can make it hard. We can put in some advanced fingerings. We can add some of the vibrato we've been working on. We can do some cool stuff. And so I thought, wow, that's going to be a great way to differentiate for those kids that are really doing well. And for the kids that maybe are struggling, they're going to feel successful because they're going to have a little easier time with that piece. So providing extra tutoring time, sectional time, small group, utilizing peer tutoring, allowing for students to practice something pizzicato, then add the bow, and then increasing the speed for advancing students. Or having struggling students only play the bass line, using different fingerings, color coding, highlighting, simplified parts for students that maybe need additional help. There's a lot of teachers that have figured out great ways to differentiate for students with maybe some reading difficulties to help them track music. A lot of that involves color coding and highlighting. Demonstrating exemplars and non-exemplars so that students have to identify what's wrong sometimes is really helpful. And then asking questions for different types of learners, like, okay, sing your pitch, tell me your pitch, raise your hand when you hear this pitch. So asking questions to target those different types of learners is really helpful too. And those are kind of things that we can look for in a music classroom or the orchestra classroom that demonstrate differentiation. So when your administrator says, show me how you're differentiating, these are some of those ways. So standard 5 is also one that really harnesses differentiation as part of its main content. So standard 5 looks at assessment strategies. This is dealing with aligning student assessment with the curriculum, involving students in their learnings, setting goals and then monitoring progress, varying and modifying assessments to individual needs and progress. That's a huge part of differentiation. Identifying and using both formal and informal assessments, and then all the different types of assessments, diagnostic, formative, and summative, which we know is part of differentiation. Using grading practices that report mastery. Again, not only looking like, did they learn that content, but if they didn't learn that content, then we have to go back, circle back, and make sure they learn it and can demonstrate mastery. Using assessment techniques that are appropriate for the developmental level of the students, and then collaborating with others to develop maybe common assessments when appropriate. So, that doesn't always work for our content area because we may be the only one in our building, but we may not be. Or maybe you're not the only orchestra teacher in your district. In my district, I'm one of many orchestra teachers. So this is an opportunity for me to work with my colleagues to maybe have some common assessments. So according to the documents that are available on Georgia Department of Education, here are some general look-fors. How do you know who's with you throughout the period? How do you know who's paying attention? What do you do about it? So using some nonverbal cues, using some feedback, and then giving timely and specific and consistent feedback. This is really important for us, especially because we give so much real-time feedback. and really being clear and specific, not just saying, good job. You can say, great, I loved that you all played the correct bowing. However, we did not play in tune, so let's celebrate our good bowing. Let's go back now and fix that intonation. So clear and consistent feedback. And then making sure that we're using the variety of assessments that are formative and diagnostic so that we can build our instruction with differentiation. And there's some examples there of some formal and informal. Using the backwards design model, so creating the assessment before you begin the unit so you know what you want your end product to be. Utilizing digital platforms and resources to enhance, what you've got going on. And then assessing as a form of communication. So we know that when we adjust our instruction, then the whole class can demonstrate that mastery. So for orchestra, what does standard 5 look like? Well, for us, it's giving instant feedback. We often are doing this constantly, but we need to be clear and consistent. It's diagnosing rhythm problems, pitch problems, bowing problems, all kinds of things, phrasing problems. Using the students to play the teacher, and then the students play, and then the teacher or the other students can play teacher and correct it, and then the students play again. So play, correct, redo, adjust again, or it's good. So using that model. Utilizing the GMEA rubrics that are available to us, because that's what we use for performance evaluation, using those in class. Continuously assessing and fixing errors. So, we don't always want to stop every time an error is made because we'd probably stop every note, but assessing errors and stopping and correcting, or correcting while they're playing, is also an important way we can use assessment. Continuously reminding them about posture and position, and then remediating and extending that as we need to. Asking students to informally assess the group. Okay, Daniel, what went well in that viola part that we just went over that the violas played? Okay, Cindy, did all the violas use the same bowing? So engaging other sections also and using students to help with that. Providing formal assessments, using written quizzes is also good. Using concert evaluations, a glows and grows after the concert is really great. Evaluating and having students self-evaluate photos or videos of themselves, and it can be posture, position, it can be any kind of things. We did last year, students submitted bow hold photos, and we had students first send them to us, and then we assess them, and then we put some up, and the class would assess. We put them up anonymously, but having the class assess what looked good, what didn't look good, and identifying some things in their bow holds that needed work. Having recording devices available so that we can record the group, listen back, and provide feedback. Having students show and not always tell. So show me the finger pattern for a C sharp on your A string. So cellos, basses, violin, viola. So again, having students show and not always tell. So you can see who's doing it versus still, not quite getting it. Using video and photos we talked about to evaluate. Incorporating individual assessment within the group rehearsal. So meaning, one of my favorite things to do is to snake something, like to snake a pitch. So, okay, you play, next person, and just, you can high, low, I have them, let's say there's a tricky rhythm, ba, 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 okay, next person, da, 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 next person, oh, not quite right, let's do it again, next person, and just go all the way around the room. So you're having some quick individual assessment. Show me your starting pitch. What fingering are you starting on? Throw questions back at the class. Use questioning techniques. These are great ways that we can demonstrate standard 5. And then the last one that really addresses differentiation in the orchestra classroom is standard 6, assessment uses. This is using diagnostic assessment data to develop our goals and differentiate instruction. So there it is. Planning your assessments, whether they're formal, informal, and aligning them with your instructional results. Using assessment tools for formative and summative assessments to inform, guide, and adjust. Systematically analyzing, so, looking at all your data. Providing feedback to students on their progress. Really important that they not only get the grade, but they know why and understand how to work towards mastery. And then showing students how to self-assess. That's really important that students can look at their own playing or look at what they're learning and figure out, how do I get better at it? Oftentimes students are hardest on themselves, we find. So general look fors that we see with standard 6 is progress monitoring, some kind of progress monitoring. Some people like to use a class list and they label level 1, level 2, level 3s, and then they move them as the kids get through it. But monitoring the progress throughout when you're working on a skill, giving feedback to the group to help close any gaps. So maybe the students are really doing well and they've got the intonation, they've got the rhythm, but maybe there's some bowing inaccuracies. So you're going to close that gap. So using your feedback to help close those gaps. Teachers being flexible and giving opportunities for response. So when you lead the student to the understanding of a concept, you ask them questions and they start to understand, then you use their response to help guide what you're going to do next. Okay, students have opportunities to demonstrate mastery. So even if they don't do well the first time, they can reassess and demonstrate that mastery. It's really important that our goal isn't a grade, but that our goal is to help them actually master the content, and then they can earn the good grade. And then reading the room. What's going on? Are the kids paying attention? Are they bored? Are they doing something else? But reading the room and making adjustments. So what does it look like when your administrator comes in for standard 6? Well, maybe you're doing a music writing activity for ear training, or maybe you're using the LGPE rubric to have them self-assess their performance. Or maybe you're doing a pre-LGPE concert as a formative before your actual summative assessment. Maybe you're allowing students to hold up finger patterns and check that they're understanding, or you're having them hold up how many sharps are in the key of D major. So every kid should do this. Maybe students are not paying attention, or something's not going well, so you have to change the course of the lesson. Or maybe, the kids aren't getting something. So you start warming up on a C major 2-octave scale and you suddenly realize they're all playing enough sharp in it. Okay, so you have to adjust your instruction on the fly, draw back and punt, go back through C major and review that. They use concerts as summative assessments and formative assessments for the next set of concerts. So something can be both a formative and a summative at the same time. Orchestra classrooms tend to allow for playing tests to be retaken multiple times for mastery. Again, the grade is not the goal, but mastery is. And with that should come a good grade. Diagnosing issues and addressing the concepts and then practicing it with the students. And then constructing your warm-ups to help prepare for the issues that are coming up in the repertoire, or to address issues that were happening in the previous rehearsal. So other standards that we can correlate with differentiation, obviously you have to have a really strong professional knowledge to be able to differentiate. You have to have a pretty great bag of tricks in orchestra knowledge to be able to figure out how to differentiate it. And also instructional planning for differentiation is one of the biggest pieces, as far as you must really sit down and figure out how can you do this thing multiple ways and deliver it multiple ways to reach all those learners. And the same thing with instructional strategies. What strategies are you going to use? How are you going to reach all those different kids in different learning styles? Positive learning environment, actually, you may not think that goes with differentiation, but when students feel successful because they're getting content delivered in a way that they can understand, then it creates a more positive learning environment. And finally, creating an academically challenging environment by offering remediation for those that need it, by offering extension, and by offering acceleration for those that need it as well. So I'm really excited to hear what has worked in your classroom for differentiation. Many of us are often frustrated with this topic because of the large class sizes we teach, but there are many quick and easy ways, I think, that we can share with one another to help make this happen. I'm excited to engage with you on our discussion post. Please reach out if you have any questions, and hopefully we'll hear from you this month.